So I wrote something about RFK for Jacobin that came out, I don't know, a few days ago. It's called Populist, RFK Jr. doesn't even support Medicare for all. And the kind of basic argument of the piece is that, I think when people think about this guy, I mean, unless you're just a very healthy non-online person who doesn't think about him, in which case, congratulations, continue to live your life as you have been living it. But people who do think about him, right? Like, I think that just kind of given the alignments, which people like him, which people don't like him, all of that stuff. I think and also given the fact that probably the thing that he's best known for are his kooky views on vaccines, that there's this tendency to see him either positively or negatively, right? Whether you think it's a good thing or a bad thing, as this kind of like out there, edgy, anti-establishment figure. And I would suggest that the evidence doesn't really support that. So, for example, we have a clip of RFK Jr. on Breaking Points talking to Crystal Ball about healthcare policy.
As you know, every other developed nation in the world has universal health care. Do you support universal health care through a Medicare for All program or something similar?
I would say my highest ambition would be to have a single payer program, which, with people who want to have private programs can go ahead and do that, but to have a single payer program that is available to everybody. I don't know how politically realistic that is, but, if you ask me if I were designing the system from the beginning, that's what I would do.
So what interests me here, and look, again, I don't like RFK's views on vaccines. Nathan Robinson and Lily Sanchez at Current Affairs did an article that I link in mine where they go through a lot of the claims that he's made about this and sort of say, hey, he says there's all this evidence that for, whatever, ivermectin, actually does work really well, but like here's the meta-analysis that says exactly the opposite of that, and et cetera. So you want to see all that broken down, go check out Nathan and Lily's article. But, my thought is that everybody who has an opinion, pro or con, about RFK Jr. has already factored in the vaccine stuff. They know this. And what I'm interested in is actually not the respects in which he's kooky, but the respects in which he's depressingly normal for American politics. And in that clip that we just listened to, think about this. I don't know, 2009, I don't know, a year or two before Jake was born, I can remember Barack Obama on TV talking about his proposal for the Affordable Care Act, right, Obamacare. And I remember Obama using almost exactly the same words to say, well, look, if we were starting over from scratch, of course I'd like single payer, but, right? And then he never actually explains why it is that it's like, metaphysically impossible that after we have the for-profit healthcare system up and running, we could get rid of it.
That's a really good joke, Antonio. We could skip past it, but that's a really good joke.
No, that's props.
Podcast listeners email us, and we'll let you know what Antonio said.
Yeah, I feel like saying it out loud and having to explain the spelling and everything would kind of kill the joke. So yeah, DMs are open for anybody who wants to know what Antonio's ivermectin joke was. But yeah, so like in 2009, right? What Obama is saying, the core of it is the exact same thing RFK says to Crystal in that clip, that it's no, that like, look, sure, if we were just starting over from the very beginning, single payer would be nice, but sadly, what are you going to do? And that's bad. And that's bad enough. But also the other half of this is that in 2009, when Obama was saying it, what he was proposing instead of single payer, because we can't do that because we're not starting from scratch, was the original version of Obamacare that at least had a public option in it. That, there'd be like one public plan that, would compete with different private plans. And to be clear, I think the gap between those two things is really important, between single payer and a public option. That, public option, like right now, if you're poor enough, you already get a public option, right? It's Medicaid, and lots of doctors won't take it because they get reimbursed at a higher rate from private plans. So a proposal for a public option, competing with private plans, is a proposal for two-tiered healthcare for rich people and poor people. I have a big problem with that. I also think a lot of the sort of things that are pathological about America's healthcare system would still be pathological about America's healthcare system, even with a public option that was available for everybody, as much of an improvement as that would be. That like, oh, well, if you have the better healthcare, you don't want to leave your job, because you would lose that, or, you don't want to leave your marriage maybe because you don't want to lose it, all that stuff. So I have many, many problems with that. But of course, Obama ended up ditching it anyway in the negotiations about the ACA. And Joe Biden said in the 2020 primaries that he supported a public option. He brought it back up, because Bernie was advocating single payer public option. By definition, you're talking about a multi-payer system, multiple payers competing with each other. And so, because healthcare dominated so much of the Democratic debates in 2020, Biden made a big deal supporting a public option. And then, January 2021, it was never heard of again. But whatever you think about that, just want to make the point here that what RFK is doing in that clip is he's redefining single payer to just mean a public option, right? If you listen to what he said, that, well, there's a public plan that would be available to people, but of course, if you want a private plan instead, that's cool. So he's redefining single payer to mean a public option. He's taking the Joe Biden, Pete Buttigieg, et cetera, view from 2020 and calling it single payer. But two, he's not even advocating that. He's saying, well, look, if we were starting over from the beginning in that beautiful hypothetical world, then we could have a public option. But, since we're not, we can't. And act like, man, I mean, if you take away the craziness about vaccines, seems to me that this guy is just kind of another Democrat.
Yeah, and I don't think we have time to fully answer this question, so maybe I'll just put it out there as a question. But my understanding is that, some folks who are heterodox on the left, like Jimmy, like our friend of the show, Jimmy Dore, had a very friendly interview with him, right?
Which is amazing, right?
Yes.
Because this is a guy who said many, many times that like AOC and Rashida Tlaib and all these people are fucking sellouts because they didn't use the particular strategy that he wanted to achieve Medicare for all. And you have this guy RFK who's openly not in favor of Medicare for all, and somehow he's okay.
Yeah, that's my question. What's the difference? One is like you don't support the same strategy to get to that end versus, you
just don't support the end. That's
I guess that's more honest. The guys like us, we actually don't support it, but we're hiding behind the fact that we weren't sure if that was good, if that one strategy was going to work. So
we're pretending to think it was an incredibly
yellow bellies.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The deopposition. I really hated all those years that I had spent pretending to support and advocate this.
So that was my open question.
No, I think that is a very very fair question. I will also say that I think probably the best case you can make for RFK, let's say you're willing to give him a pass on the vaccine kookiness, and you're willing to give him a pass for not even supporting Medicare for all, the sort of most basic dividing line, between kind of the Bernie wing and the mainstream wing of the Democratic Party. The best case for him is on foreign policy and like on his best moments, right? He will say things like, "Oh, I want to unwind the empire." But the point I make about this in the article is, look, let's imagine a hypothetical President Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Taking office, January 2025, and then proceeding to try to, as he says, unwind empire. Well, that would take like really enormous reserves of political courage, right? I mean, that you'd be opposed to the entirety of the defense and national security establishments, the intelligence community, whatever, the whole multifaceted, sprawling, military industrial complex would be bitterly opposing you at every moment. And so say, okay, does anything that this guy says actually suggest that he possesses anything like that kind of courage? And I would point to something that happened about a week ago, or a little bit more, I think maybe a couple weeks ago, when Kennedy praised Roger Waters, and he got a lot of backlash about that. And look, Roger Waters, I have mixed feelings. I love Pink Floyd, but there's like about his political views, right? I think there's room for legitimate criticism on some issues. But what the criticism was really about was the idea that it's like, oh, he's anti-Israel, and this is a sign of anti-Semitism. It was that smear. And RFK's response was not to sort of boldly condemn that and assert, his strong support for Palestinian human rights and or anything like that, right? His response was to meet with Rabbi Shmuley Botiak. I'm actually not 100% on the pronunciation of the surname. My apologies. And reassert what he called his unalterable and unshakable commitment to Israel, and to agree to march in like a Israel Day parade with the rabbi the next week. None of which really, I don't know. I got to say, none of this really inspires confidence that this is a guy as president who would really stick to his guns on any of these issues. Look, on some level, none of this particularly matters. I don't really think, if you ask me, I don't really think that there's going to be a meaningful Democratic primary next year. I'd love to be wrong, right? But I don't think there's going to be, right? So this is largely supporting any of these guys is largely symbolic, but I just think with this particular guy, the symbolism sucks. You have been watching free public content from Give Them an Argument. To access every single episode of the show, the main show on Monday nights, all of the streams, all of the debate breakdowns, all of the patron-exclusive post-games on Monday nights, all of the patron-exclusive bonus episodes every week, and much, much more, go to patreon.com/Ben Burgis. I cannot resist ending this with, don't be foolish.